think about the fact that maybe you're an insurance company and you're in another state and you're deciding whether or not you want to do business in Florida. And insurance is all about risk, right? You want to mitigate your risk. You don't want to have to pay claims if you don't want to have to pay claims, right? So you're examining the market in Florida and you say, well, okay, let's take a look at Florida. All right, we've got 1,500 miles of coastline surrounded by water. Okay, great. Look, that's probably risky. Do they ever get hurricanes there? Yep, sure do. In fact, they hit a lot. Okay, well, that's another risk factor. We've got roughly 19 million people in extraordinarily densely populated areas, predominantly around the coastline of the state of Florida, and building stock that only about 60% of is actually built to current code. Okay. Might be a challenging situation risk-wise. And then let's see who our competitor is. Who's our competitors in the marketplace? Oh, well, the largest competitor happens to be the state of Florida, and they don't have rates that are actually actuarially sound. So I've got a tremendous amount of risk, and my competitor isn't playing on the same ball field that I am. SB 408 takes a step in the right direction towards bringing it towards a level playing field, and I think that at the end of the day, yes, fact of the matter is, if you're with a private insurance company, your rates are going to go up. And if you're with Citizen, your rates are going to go up. But the reality is that you've probably been paying a lesser amount than you should have. And that's not a very popular thing to say, I realize, and I'm not a particularly popular guy, and I'm okay with that. But the reality is, if you're not expecting to pay a higher insurance premium for living along the coast of Florida, where you could be hit by a hurricane, then you are probably of the same mindset that living in Rochester, New York, you would never have to shovel snow.
I have a lot of sort of pseudo questions here. Some of them are statements of what they'd like to see, some of them are questions. So I have a question for Representative Moriaz. It says, how do you think collection fees should be addressed after what happened last session? Which I know is not a great question, but...
Did you write that question?
No, I just got it answered. Sorry. I like the question, but I didn't write it.
Well, here's the answer on that, and I try to do a lot of education on the subject for the people that they don't understand the fees exactly. Because I am a real estate attorney. I've done a little bit of collection work in the past, and I can tell you this: that there are late fees already in the statute. They're $25 or 5% per month, or there's legal fees that are provided for in the statute. There's also interest provided for in the statute. So the question is, what is the work that a management company is doing outside of sending sort of the delinquency letter or making a phone call, which in my opinion should be covered by those late fees? What are they doing that they're collecting this? And the answer is, legally, there's nothing they can do. They can send out the letter, right? $25 a month, and then turn over to attorneys. And so the question is, what should they be able to charge on top of what's already provided for in the statute with late fees? My opinion is nothing. I mean, basically, there's a ledger that gets turned over to the law firm that will handle the legal part of the collection, or they make phone calls. And so we did have somewhat of a battle this past session. Again, I've got an open mind to listening about it, but in the end, I sort of feel like these fees fall in the gap, and they just put an additional burden on people who already cannot pay their bills. Ultimately, again, if you're not going to pay it, you're going to be a deadbeat, then there's going to be a lawsuit. The legal fees aren't provided for, but the fact is a management collection company or management association cannot legally compel anyone. And so I don't believe that the fees are justified as an additional amount in the statute. Not to say that the work of management companies isn't valuable. It is. But collection work is the province of attorneys. And again, the Supreme Court has upheld that pre-litigation activities in pursuing a collection is the practice of law. It's not something that a non-lawyer can do. So that is our current law. So I do not support at this point management association fees for collection.
This is going to be a two-part question, and it's to all the legislators. Part A is, how many of the honorable legislators that are sitting on our panel actually live in a HOA or own a condo? A show of hands. So we have. Okay, all right. So non-mandatory and mandatory, we have 100%.
Fair dues, I must have it. Fair dues.
The second is maybe a procedural question, and I'm going to direct it to Representative Clark Reed. And that is, why is there only one community association bill passed or addressed each year from the crowd?
Well, as you heard from Representative Morales, how hard it was for him to get his bill through. I think it's a mindset in the legislature as to what bills are more important, what's the priority of this legislature and during that time, and just getting your bill into the committee. So, there are bills out there, more than the one bill that was passed, but they never made it to committee. So by not making it to committee, it would not have an opportunity to be vetted and go through the process. So that's it.
I have actually a follow-up question on that, if I may. Is there any chance of changing that mindset up in Tallahassee? Because what tends to happen is there is this feeling that every community association proposal kind of has to be lumped onto the same moving vehicle, and it's not dissimilar from doing 122 amendments to your own documents. Some of it's great and some of it's not so great. So is there any chance of changing the mindset that you can have more than one community association bill heard and passed so long as they don't have conflicting language?
It's a good question, and I think it's not just indicative to community association type of bills. This past year, I had a very large healthcare deregulation bill, which was really the only healthcare bill moving of any consequence. And as a result, a myriad of things got put onto that bill that, quite frankly, I ultimately killed my own bill because it was bad policy and wouldn't take. Again, I didn't say I was a popular guy. But I think it's more of a systemic thing. You have to understand that, Representative Porth alluded to the fact that we all get 6 bill slots in his introduction. Well, what that equates to, once you add in the bill slots, ceremonial resolutions, all that type of thing, the senator's bill slots, you end up getting about 2,700 to 3,000 bills filed every year. And we only meet in session for 60 days. And the only thing we have to do is pass the budget. And so just from a physical timeline of getting things done, the Constitution says we're there for 60 days and you got to pass a balanced budget. So a number of different things end up kind of getting lumped together just because we physically don't have the time to go through all of them in session. There are a lot of good things that we'd like to hear, but there's just physically a limit to the amount of time that can actually get done. I would like to say that you would see a change to that in the short term, but I would be remiss if I actually believe that. I think that since we have a 60-day session, and especially this upcoming year where we're going to be focused on redistricting and also on the budget, that you will see an extremely low number of actual substantive bills actually passed. This year, I think, was a record low, if I'm not mistaken. And so I would see that not changing much next year.
How many passed? Was it 355?
It was a very small amount. When you take away the budget bills and actually get the substantive bills, it was well under 300.
Yes. Everything, Representative Hudson says he's not very popular. I'm going to start calling him Lonesome Matt. But the reality is that there are so many special interests up in Tallahassee that if you've got something they don't like, they will kill it. And very often you won't even know how they're doing it, but it will die. For instance, we wanted to do something as an individual bill or as a rider to another bill that said if somebody was a deadbeat and they weren't paying their assessments or anything else, then part of what you could do is to shut off their cable TV. Okay, I had that amendment. I tried to move it along. Well, Comcast came and said, that's such a good idea. And, at the end of the day, by the time I got to committee, someone had an amendment to kill it. And then it was gone. So, it's you've got a lot going against more than one bill. And what they do is they put a lot of things on it and they call it a train. And that's how a bill will get passed. But more than one, it's very, very unlikely.
Yes.
Discussion of the bankers came up earlier, and certainly they have an extremely powerful